I didn't knock. I pushed through the ICU doors like I owned the building. In a way, I did. My name was on the new cardiac wing, etched in marble above the entrance. But none of that mattered now. Not the donations, not the galas, not the 30 years I spent putting criminals behind bars as a federal prosecutor. None of it meant a damn thing when my son was lying in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of every part of his body. The nurse at the station stood up. "Sir, visiting hours are—" "Where is he?" She must have seen something in my eyes. The kind of look that told her this wasn't a conversation. This was a statement. She pointed down the hall. "Room 412. I walked past the other rooms, past the beeping machines, and the hushed conversations, and the smell of antiseptic that never quite covers up what hospitals really smell like. Death. Waiting. The in-between place where families hold their breath and pray to whatever God they believe in. Room 412. The door was slightly open. I pushed it the rest of the way and stopped. My son, my only child, the boy I taught to ride a bike in our driveway in Connecticut, the man who graduated top of his class at Columbia Law, the father of my 2 grandchildren. He was lying there, motionless, his face swollen and purple, a ventilator breathing for him, monitors tracking every fragile heartbeat. A doctor I didn't recognize was checking something on a tablet. He looked up. "Mr. Harrington, what happened?" "Your son was in a car accident 3 days ago. Single vehicle. His car went off the road on Route 7, near the reservoir. He hit a tree at approximately 60 miles per hour. 3 days. My son had been lying here for 3 days, and I was just finding out now. Why wasn't I called?" The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "His wife. She said she would handle family notifications. She's listed as his emergency contact. His wife, my daughter-in-law, the woman who had smiled at me across the Thanksgiving table just 2 weeks ago. The woman who had kissed my cheek and called me Dad. Where is she now?" I'm not sure. She was here yesterday morning. Briefly. My son was in a coma, fighting for his life, and his wife had visited briefly. I pulled out my phone, called her number. It went straight to voicemail, that artificial sweetness in her voice. "Hi, you've reached Caroline. Leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." I didn't leave a message. Instead, I called my assistant. Margaret had been with me for 22 years. She knew how to find people. It was one of the skills that made her invaluable during my years at the Department of Justice. "Margaret, I need you to locate my daughter-in-law. Now." "Is everything all right, sir?" "No, nothing is all right. My son is in the ICU at Greenwich Hospital. He's been here for 3 days. Caroline didn't bother to tell me. Find her. Give me 30 minutes. I sat down in the chair next to my son's bed, took his hand. It was warm, but limp. No response, no squeeze back, just the steady rhythm of the machines keeping him alive. "I'm here now," I said. "I'm here, son." The memories came flooding back. Teaching him to throw a football, watching him argue his first case in court. The day he called me to say he'd met someone special. A woman named Caroline. Beautiful. Charming. From a good family in Virginia. Everything a father could want for his son. Or so I thought. Margaret called back in 23 minutes. "Sir, I found her." "Where?" There was a pause. The kind of pause that tells you the news isn't good. "She's in the Bahamas. At a resort called Paradise Cove. She checked in 2 days ago. 2 days ago. The day after my son's accident." "Is she alone?" Another pause. "No, sir. She checked in with a man." I pulled the resort's registration. "His name is Derek Weston. He's a personal trainer at the gym she goes to in Greenwich." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something deeper. Something patient. "Thank you, Margaret. I need you to do something else for me. Contact Agent Foster at the FBI. Tell him I need a favor. And call Richard Chen at the forensics lab. I want my son's car examined. Every inch of it." "Sir, the police already?" "The police didn't know what to look for." "Richard will." I hung up and looked at my son. At the tubes and wires and machines. At the bruises that covered his face. "A car accident," they said. "Single vehicle. Lost control." But my son had been driving that same road for 15 years. He knew every curve, every dip, every patch where ice formed in winter. He was one of the most careful drivers I'd ever known. He didn't just lose control. Something else happened. And I was going to find out what. The next 48 hours were a blur of phone calls, hospital visits, and quiet fury. My grandchildren were staying with Caroline's mother, who seemed as confused as anyone about why her daughter had suddenly needed a vacation. I didn't enlighten her. Not yet. Richard Chen called me on the second day. "Walter, we need to talk. In person." I met him at his lab in Stamford. He was waiting for me with a manila folder and a grim expression. "What did you find?" He opened the folder. Photographs, diagrams, technical readouts. I couldn't fully understand. The brake lines were compromised. Not cut. That would be too obvious. Someone introduced a corrosive agent into the brake fluid reservoir. Over time, maybe a week or two, it ate through the seals. When your son hit the brakes hard enough, they failed completely. I stared at the photographs. "You're telling me this was deliberate?" "I'm telling you this wasn't an accident. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew enough to make it look like mechanical failure." "Can you prove it?" "I already have. The corrosive agent leaves a specific chemical signature. I found traces of it on the reservoir cap. Someone opened it and poured something in. Someone. But I already knew who. Agent Foster met me for coffee the next morning. We had worked together on a dozen cases over the years. He owed me more favors than either of us could count. "What do you need, Walter?" "Everything you can find. On Caroline Harrington, née Caroline Montgomery. Bank accounts, phone records, travel history. And anything you can dig up on a man named Derek Weston." He nodded slowly. "You know, I can't officially. I'm not asking officially. I'm asking as a friend. As someone who put away the men who killed your partner's daughter. As someone who has never asked you for anything personal until now." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his coffee. "Give me a week." It took him 5 days. What he found was worse than I could have imagined. Caroline had been having an affair with Derek Weston for 18 months. Not a fling, a relationship. They had taken trips together. Miami, Los Angeles. A ski trip to Aspen that she told my son was a girls' weekend with her college friends. But that wasn't the worst part. 6 months ago, she had taken out a life insurance policy on my son, $2 million. She was the sole beneficiary. And 3 weeks before the accident, she had made a search on her personal laptop. The search terms were simple but damning. Brake failure causes and undetectable car sabotage. She hadn't even bothered to use incognito mode. I sat in my study that night, looking at the evidence spread across my desk. The photographs, the phone records, the insurance documents, the search history. Everything I needed to destroy her. But I wasn't going to hand this to the police. Not yet. The criminal justice system I had served for 30 years was good at many things, but it was also slow, bureaucratic, full of loopholes that clever lawyers could exploit. Caroline came from money, old money, the kind that bought the best defense attorneys and the most sympathetic judges. No. She wasn't going to wiggle out of this in some courtroom. She was going to face a different kind of justice. The kind I had learned from decades of watching the worst people in the world try to escape consequences. The kind where you don't just punish someone, you dismantle their entire life, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. I started with the money. My daughter-in-law had expensive tastes, designer clothes, luxury cars, a lifestyle that far exceeded what my son's salary as a corporate attorney could support. What she didn't know was that most of that lifestyle was funded by a trust I had established when they got married. A trust that I controlled. One phone call to my estate attorney, and the trust was frozen. The monthly deposits that had been flowing into her personal account for 7 years stopped overnight. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy in the Bahamas, drinking champagne with her personal trainer. But she noticed when her credit card was declined at the resort spa, and again at the boutique, and again at the restaurant where she was celebrating what she thought was her freedom. I know this because I had someone watching her, a private investigator named Marcus Webb, a former Secret Service agent who now specialized in domestic surveillance. He sent me photos every few hours. Caroline's face when the card was declined. The argument with Derek when she couldn't pay for dinner. The frantic phone calls she started making when she realized something was wrong. She tried to call me 3 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that started confused and ended desperate. "Dad, it's Caroline. There seems to be some issue with the bank. Can you call me back? I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Walter, it's me again. I really need to speak with you. Something's wrong with the accounts and I can't reach anyone at the bank. Please call me. Why aren't you answering? What's going on? Is this about the hospital? I was going to tell you about Michael. I needed some time to process everything. Please, just call me back." I saved every voicemail. They would be useful later. The money was just the beginning. Next came her reputation. Caroline fancied herself a socialite. She sat on the boards of 3 charities. She hosted fundraisers at our country club. She was a regular at the kinds of events where wealthy people gathered to feel good about themselves while writing tax-deductible checks. I had been part of that world for 40 years. I knew everyone who mattered, and I knew that nothing traveled faster in those circles than scandal. I didn't spread rumors. I didn't have to. I simply made sure that certain people learned certain facts. A quiet conversation with the chairman of the Greenwich Hospital Foundation, a lunch with the president of the Junior League, a phone call to the editor of the local society magazine who had been trying to get an interview with me for years. I told them the truth. My daughter-in-law was having an affair. She had fled to the Bahamas with her lover while my son was in a coma. She hadn't visited him in days. She hadn't called to check on him. She hadn't even asked about her own children. The truth, it turns out, is more devastating than any lie. Within a week, Caroline was removed from every board she sat on. Her memberships at the club were suspended. The invitations that used to fill her mailbox stopped coming. The women who used to call her friend stopped returning her calls. She tried to come back. She flew home from the Bahamas when she realized the money had dried up. She showed up at the hospital with flowers and tears, playing the role of the devoted wife. But I was waiting for her. Walter, thank God. She tried to embrace me in the hallway outside my son's room. I stepped back. What? I don't understand. What's happening? Why won't anyone talk to me? Why is the trust frozen? You know why. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. The first real emotion I had seen from her since this began. Walter, whatever you think is happening, I don't think anything. I know. I know about Derek Weston. I know about the trips. I know about the insurance policy. And I know about the brake lines. Her face went white. Actually white, like all the blood had drained from it. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And so will everyone else, soon. I walked past her into my son's room and closed the door. Through the small window, I could see her standing in the hallway, frozen, her hands shaking. Good. Let her shake. The next phase required patience. I had the evidence to put her in prison, but I wanted more than that. I wanted her to lose everything before she lost her freedom. I wanted her to experience the same helplessness my son felt when his brakes failed on that dark road. I contacted her family next. The Montgomerys were old Virginia money, proud, traditional, obsessed with appearances. Caroline's father had served in the state senate. Her mother was a fixture of Richmond society. They had never particularly liked me. They thought their daughter had married beneath her when she chose my son over the various trust fund heirs who had courted her. I sent them the evidence. All of it. The photographs, the phone records, the insurance documents, the forensic report on the brake lines. I didn't include commentary. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. Caroline's mother called me 2 days later. She was crying. Is this true? All of it? Every word. Oh God. Oh my God. We had no idea. We thought. She told us Michael was recovering. She told us she was there with him every day. She told us. She told you what she wanted you to believe. She's been lying to everyone. For a very long time. There was a long silence. Then, what are you going to do? What I have to do. The Montgomerys cut her off that week. Publicly. They released a statement through their attorney, expressing shock and sorrow over their daughter's actions, and announcing that she was no longer welcome in their home or their lives. In Richmond society, that was a death sentence, worse than prison. Prison, at least, had an end date. Caroline tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer, a flashy Manhattan litigator who specialized in defending wealthy people from the consequences of their actions. He sent me a cease and desist letter threatening defamation lawsuits if I didn't stop spreading lies about his client. I invited him to my office, showed him the evidence, all of it, the forensic report, the search history, the insurance documents, the photographs of his client in the Bahamas with her lover while her husband lay dying. He was quiet for a long time when I finished. "Mr. Harrington, I have to advise my client. Advise her to plead guilty when the charges come. Advise her that the FBI is already building a case. Advise her that attempted murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy carry sentences of 20 to life. And advise her that I have spent my entire career putting people like her in prison. I know exactly how to make sure she never gets out." He left without another word. That afternoon, his firm announced they were withdrawing from the case due to conflicts of interest. She went through 4 more lawyers that month. Each one dropped her after seeing the evidence. Word gets around in legal circles. Nobody wanted to be associated with a losing case. Nobody wanted to face me in court. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The final piece was my grandchildren, my son's children. 2 beautiful kids who had done nothing wrong and didn't deserve any of this. I filed for emergency custody. Under Connecticut law, when one parent is incapacitated and the other is under investigation for causing that incapacitation, the court can award temporary custody to extended family. My attorney filed the motion on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had the children. I remember the day I picked them up from Caroline's mother's house. My grandson was 7. My granddaughter was 5. They didn't understand what was happening. They just knew that something was wrong, and nobody would tell them what. "Grandpa, where's Mommy?" I knelt down and took their hands. "Mommy has to go away for a while, but you're going to stay with me. We're going to take care of each other, and we're going to take care of your daddy until he wakes up." My grandson looked at me with his father's eyes. "Is Daddy going to wake up?" I thought about lying, about giving him false hope, but I had spent my life pursuing truth, even when it hurt. "I don't know, buddy, but we're going to hope, and we're going to be there for him. That's what families do." 3 weeks later, my son opened his eyes. I was there when it happened. I had been there every day, reading to him, talking to him, playing his favorite music. The doctors said there was no evidence that coma patients could hear anything, but I didn't care. I needed him to know he wasn't alone. His fingers moved first, a twitch, then his hand closed around mine. "Dad?" His voice was barely a whisper, dry and cracked from weeks of disuse, but it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. "I'm here, son. I'm right here." He tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "What happened? Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You were in an accident." "Accident?" He looked confused. I remember driving, coming home from work. The brakes didn't work. I couldn't stop. "I know. We know what happened. It wasn't an accident." I saw the understanding dawn in his eyes, the terrible comprehension. "Caroline?" I nodded. He didn't say anything. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, processing the fact that the woman he had loved, the mother of his children, had tried to kill him. "The kids? They're safe. They're with me. They're okay. And Caroline? She's going to prison. For a very long time. I made sure of it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned his head and looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Thank you, Dad. That's what fathers do." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Caroline pleaded not guilty, despite the evidence, despite everything. Her court-appointed attorney did his best, but there was no defense against forensic evidence, phone records, search histories, and testimony from her own lover who had cut a deal in exchange for his cooperation. I testified on the second day. I described finding my son in the hospital, the investigation, the evidence I had uncovered, the way she had fled to the Bahamas while he lay dying. The jury was out for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the 1st degree. Insurance fraud, conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 35 years to life. I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. I watched her face collapse, watched the reality finally hit her that all the money, all the connections, all the charm she had used to manipulate everyone around her couldn't save her now. She looked at me as they led her away in handcuffs. Her eyes were full of hatred, pure, undiluted hatred. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Just a cold, empty sense of completion. It's been 2 years now. My son has recovered, mostly. He walks with a slight limp. He has headaches sometimes. But he's alive. He's with his children. He's rebuilding his life. He met someone new last month, a woman from his physical therapy group, a widow with 2 kids of her own. She's kind, genuine, everything Caroline pretended to be, but never was. I don't talk about what I did, not the details. My son knows some of it. My grandchildren know nothing. They think their mother is in prison because she did something bad, which is true. They don't need to know more than that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But sometimes, late at night, I sit in my study and I think about justice, about what it really means. The system I served for 30 years is designed to be fair, impartial, blind. But blind justice doesn't see the victims, doesn't see the children who lose their parents, doesn't see the fathers who sit by hospital beds, praying for their sons to wake up. I took justice into my own hands. Not with violence, not with illegal action, with information, with connections, with the relentless, patient dismantling of every defense she tried to erect. Was it right? I don't know. I don't care. My son is alive. My grandchildren are safe. The woman who tried to destroy our family is spending the rest of her life in a cell. If that's not justice, I don't know what is. My grandson asked me the other day what I used to do for a living. I told him I was a lawyer, that I helped put bad people in jail. Like Mommy? He asked. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to a child that his mother tried to kill his father? That the person who was supposed to love and protect him was capable of something so monstrous? Yes, I finally said. Like Mommy. He nodded. Like it made perfect sense. Children are remarkable that way. They accept the world as it is, not as it should be. Grandpa? Yes? I'm glad you're here. I pulled him into a hug, held him tight, felt his small heart beating against my chest. Me too, buddy. Me too. That's the thing about family. You do whatever it takes to protect them, whatever it takes. And when someone threatens them, when someone hurts them, you don't wait for the system to catch up. You don't wait for justice to be served on someone else's timeline. You take matters into your own hands, and you make sure they never hurt anyone again. Some people might call that vengeance. They might say I went too far, that I should have trusted the system, that I should have let the police handle it. But those people have never sat by their child's hospital bed, watching machines breathe for them, knowing that the person responsible is sipping cocktails on a beach somewhere. Those people don't understand what a father will do when his son is in danger. And I hope, for their sake, they never have to find out. My son came to visit last weekend. He brought the children and the woman from physical therapy and a bottle of wine from my favorite vineyard. We sat on the back porch and watched the sunset over the Long Island Sound. Dad? I never thanked you properly. For everything you did. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. He paused, struggling to find the words. When I woke up in that hospital, I didn't want to live. I thought my wife loved me. I thought we had a good life. Finding out the truth. It broke something inside me. I know, but you were there, every day. You held everything together when I couldn't. You protected the kids. You made sure she paid for what she did. His voice cracked. You gave me a reason to keep going. I reached over and squeezed his hand. The same hand I had held when he was a baby. The same hand I had held when he lay in that hospital bed. That's what fathers do, I said. We protect our children, no matter what, no matter how old they get, no matter how grown up they become. You're still my son. You'll always be my son, and I will always, always protect you. He didn't say anything. He just held my hand and watched the sun sink below the horizon. In the distance, I could hear my grandchildren laughing, playing in the yard, being children, being happy. That sound, that simple, beautiful sound, that was why I did what I did. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. The night is quiet now. The house is empty except for me. My son took the children home. The woman from physical therapy, Sarah is her name, she smiled at me when they left. A real smile. The kind you can trust. I pour myself a drink. Scotch. Neat. The good stuff I save for special occasions. I don't feel like a hero. I don't feel like a villain. I just feel like a father who did what he had to do. The justice system I served for 30 years would say I crossed lines, that I manipulated evidence, that I used my connections inappropriately, that I waged a personal vendetta instead of letting the proper authorities handle things. Maybe they're right. Maybe I did cross lines. But my son is alive. My grandchildren have their father, and the woman who tried to take all of that away from us is behind bars where she belongs. If that's crossing lines, then I'll cross them again, and again, and again, as many times as it takes. Because that's what family means. That's what love means. That's what being a father means. You protect what matters, no matter the cost, no matter the consequences, no matter what anyone else thinks. And when someone tries to destroy what you love, you don't wait for permission. You act, you fight, and you win. I finish my scotch and set down the glass. Outside, the moon is rising over the water, silver light on dark waves, peaceful, quiet. The kind of night where you can almost believe that everything is right with the world. Almost because I know the truth. The world is full of people like Caroline, beautiful on the outside, rotten on the inside. People who will smile at you across the dinner table while they plan your destruction. People who will kiss your cheek and call you dad while they're searching the internet for ways to kill your son. The world is full of monsters wearing human faces. But it's also full of people who will stand against them. People who will fight for their families. People who will do whatever it takes to protect the ones they love. I am one of those people, and I will never apologize for it. The end. If you're watching this, I want you to think about something. Think about the people in your life, the ones you love, the ones you would do anything to protect. Now imagine someone trying to take them away from you, not through honest conflict, not through fair competition, but through lies, through manipulation, through cold-blooded attempted murder. What would you do? I know what I did. I dismantled her life the same way she tried to dismantle mine, piece by piece, layer by layer, until there was nothing left. Some would call that revenge. I call it justice. The kind of justice that doesn't wait for courts and lawyers and appeals that drag on for years while victims suffer. The kind of justice that protects what matters. The kind of justice that a father delivers when his son is in danger. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you understand what it means to protect your family at all costs, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. And remember, no matter what anyone tells you, there is nothing more important than the people you love. Nothing. I'm Walter Harrington, and this has been my story of whispered vengeance.